Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating and, honestly, paradoxical figures in modern history. We're looking at a man who was a brilliantly chaotic tinkerer, someone who quite literally birthed the modern electronic age, yet lived an absolute roller coaster of a life. I mean, we are talking wild swings between monumental triumphs and spectacular disasters. His name was Lee de Forest.
Just listen to this quote. Lee de Forest once declared, "I discovered an invisible empire of the air, intangible, yet solid as granite." It sets this epic, almost mythological tone, doesn't it? He clearly had this incredibly grand vision of himself and his discoveries. But, as we're about to see, we kind of need to pull the rug out from under that majestic image to reveal a reality that was, frankly, incredibly messy.
So, who actually invented the electronic age? When you think about the origins of the devices you use every single day, from the radio in your car to the smartphone in your pocket to the massive networks connecting our world, who do you picture? You might instantly think of Edison or Tesla or Marconi. But de Forest? Well, he's the unsung, deeply flawed architect behind so much of it all.
To really understand de Forest, you have to look at his raw output. 300. That is the number of patents Lee de Forest held worldwide. It's a monumental achievement. It shows a mind that was just constantly spinning with new ideas, from directional antennas to wireless telegraphy systems. He had all the classic traits of a traditional tinkerer: visionary faith, serious perseverance, and a massive capacity for sustained hard work.
But you have to contrast that monumental achievement with this number, 4. That's how many separate fortunes de Forest boasted he made, and then completely lost over the course of his career. For all his inventive brilliance, he had absolutely catastrophic business sense. His companies were frequently built on wild exaggeration, and he was constantly clashing with his management and his partners.
And this brings us to the ultimate mystery of his life. $1,250. The man who literally pioneered radio broadcasting, paved the way for television, and brought talking pictures to life, died in 1961 with only $1,250 in his bank account. How does a guy who gave us the modern world end up with so little? Well, to understand that, we have to look at his absolute greatest breakthrough.
Section 1. The Audion Breakthrough, Amplifying the World.
Early radio technology, like the systems Guglielmo Marconi was using in the late 1800s, relied on receivers that were painfully slow, insensitive, and just really unreliable. De Forest was absolutely determined to fix this, and in 1906, he made a world-changing breakthrough: the Audion, which is also known as the triode vacuum tube. Basically, he took a glass vacuum tube and added a third element inside of it, a control electrode. He called it a grid, supposedly because it looked like the gridiron lines on an American football field. This single addition changed human history for sure, because it created the first practical device that could actually amplify electrical signals.
Okay, without getting totally bogged down in dense physics, here's how it actually works. A weak radio or audio signal enters the Audion. Then, that internal grid controls the flow of electrons right through the vacuum tube, and the Audion amplifies that signal into a much louder, stronger output. This meant signals could finally be made louder. It is the exact technology that allowed AT&T to make the very first transcontinental telephone calls in 1915. And it's what made live mass radio broadcasting possible for the first time ever.
Section 2. Lawsuits, frauds, and feuds, the price of invention.
Now, de Forest's professional life was an absolute revolving door of chaos. It was defined by terrible corporate management, crazy stock selling excesses, and these bitter, lifelong rivalries. Think about how fast this all moved. In 1906, he invents a world-changing device with the Audion. But by 1912, he and his company executives are actually arrested and charged with using the mail to defraud investors. He was acquitted in 1913, but the drama didn't stop, because by 1914, he was locked in a vicious 20-year patent war over who actually discovered the principle of the feedback circuit, which allowed these tubes to amplify signals even further.
That specific patent war was primarily against a man named Edwin Howard Armstrong, and these two guys couldn't have been more different. On one hand, you had de Forest, an empirical tinkerer who stumbled onto discoveries and honestly often misunderstood the actual physics of his own inventions. On the other hand, you had Armstrong, a man with a deep, calculated understanding of physics who rigorously documented every step of his work. Ultimately, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of de Forest based on a single early notebook entry, so he legally won the patent. But the engineering community, they largely credited Armstrong and viewed de Forest as just someone who skillfully manipulated the legal system. It was a massive feud that lasted right up until Armstrong's death. Section 3.
bringing sound to film, the phonofilm era.
So it's 1921, and DeForest makes a massive pivot. Despite all his success in radio, he essentially walks away from his radio research. His new obsession? Bringing optical sound to motion pictures. He wanted to make movies talk, and he called his system phonofilm. The technical leap he made here was absolutely brilliant. He figured out a way to take electrical waveforms produced by a microphone and record them photographically directly onto the film itself using parallel lines of varying shades of gray. In April 1923, he premiered 18 short sound films in New York. But despite this incredible triumph, the major Hollywood studios completely ignored him. Why? Well, instead of filming full-length feature films that audiences actually wanted to pay to see, DeForest stubbornly focused on filming short vaudeville acts. He just utterly fumbled the commercialization.
And honestly, the situation only got worse for him. Competitors like Fox Movietone and Warner Brothers Vitaphone quickly swooped in and took over the market. See, DeForest had this habit of continually downplaying his partner's contributions, and he had a notoriously abrasive personality. So he ended up alienating the very people who were helping him perfect the system. Key partners like Theodore Case eventually just packed up, left, took their patents, and partnered directly with Fox. DeForest completely opened the door to the talkies, but his personality pushed him right out of the room.
Section 4. An Empire of the Air, the Final Paradox. As he grew older, DeForest's character deepened into this huge paradox. He became a staunch conservative, a fervent anti-communist, and a really bitter critic of modern radio. He was constantly complaining that the medium he helped create had been ruined by advertising and ragtime music. And those intense, unyielding opinions led to some hilariously wrong predictions. In 1926, the self-proclaimed father of radio flat-out declared, "I consider television an impossibility, a development of which we need not waste little time in dreaming." No way, right? He was completely, wildly wrong about the future of television, and even adamantly stated that humans would never travel to the moon or Mars.
But you can't count his imagination out entirely, because when he was right, he was terrifyingly accurate. Decades before the microwave oven became a normal thing in our homes, he accurately predicted that short waves would be used in the kitchen for roasting and baking. He foresaw multi-channel microwave broadcasts and rapid electronic communication. And this is wild. In 1940, he actually co-designed a concept for an unmanned combat drone guided by television and radio control. His mind was absolutely still envisioning modern marvels.
So, what is his ultimate legacy? Well, the Audion vacuum tube completely dominated the field of electronics for 40 straight years. It's the thing that made long-distance telephone service, radio broadcasting, television, and even early digital computers possible. Yes, he lost fortunes. Yes, he engaged in bitter feuds. And yeah, he even misunderstood his own physics at times. But his imperfect, chaotic genius was the absolute necessary bridge to the transistor and the entire digital age we live in right now.
All of this leaves us with a really fascinating question. How much of our modern world actually relies on the accidental discoveries of flawed geniuses? It is so easy to look at the sleek, polished smartphones in our pockets and just assume they came from a clean, perfectly logical scientific process. But as Lee DeForest's life proves to us, the foundation of our electronic age wasn't clean or logical at all. It was built on messy, human origins, chaotic tinkering, and spectacular, accidental triumphs. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the origins of the world around you, and I'll see you next time.